Brazil's national identity is intertwined with its musical culture. In the 30s, samba was used by politicians to foster unity in this vast multiracial country. Though after a military coup in 1964, musicians were censored or jailed. Since the 80s, democratic Brazil has faced new challenges, with the gulf between rich and poor and black and white reflected in the very different styles that developed in 4 cities that came to dominate Brazilian music. The new Brazil was launched with a massive rock show. In 1985, the year that Brazil eventually made the transition from military regime back to democracy, an audience of nearly 1.5 million people attended a 10-day festival. Rock in Rio featured veterans like Gilberto Gil, now in the vanguard of the new Brazilian reggae scene, and international stars like Queen. It was a festival that established Brazil on the international rock circuit, but reflected the divisions in the country. Brazil prides itself on being a multiracial society, but the gap between rich and poor had widened during the military era, and the richest tended to be the more white, the poorest the more black. Rock attracted audiences that were predominantly white and middle class.
It's a middle class music, yes, because the poor people, I think it's more in the forró and the axé music, and it's not rock. I think there's a question of middle class.
Axé and forró are styles from northern Brazil, where the new fashion for Western rock was also seen as music for a particular class and race.
E aqui no Brasil, o rock é uma afirmação, principalmente para pessoas de classe média. E classe média aqui, quando você fala, Brasil, porque você não encontra muito preto e classe média, até cresceu agora, melhorou. Mas vamos dizer, quem mora em apartamento bom, tem grandes carros e usa a camisa Hennig, odeia a música do Brasil, calca-se no rock and roll.
Brazil developed its own rock scene, with the heavy metal band Sepultura becoming the country's biggest international success since Sergio Mendes in the 60s. But there were complaints that Brazilian music was being swamped by foreign styles.
Very few bands from the 80s in Brazil did something different from the bands in the UK or the US using Brazilian rhythms. And the ones who used the Brazilian rhythms in the 80s were not as successful as the ones who were basically copying.
But Brazilian music was about to be transformed from an unexpected source. In the early 90s, the northern port of Recife was named by a Washington Research Institute as the 4th worst city in the world to live in. But it was in Recife, the capital of Pernambuco state, that a new, distinctively Brazilian style emerged, created by local musicians determined to change a city known for its swamplands, unemployment, crime and poverty. The new style, Mangue Beat, took its name from the mangrove swamps and the new digital world.
The Mangue Beat changed the whole thing in Recife, and after that in Pernambuco, and after in Brazil, because we came from the 80s, you only could hear rock and roll from the southeast, or a few commercial rhythms in the radio and everywhere. And we begin to talk about diversity and playing different music and mixing different music. and talking about looking with respect to the traditional music from the Northeast.
Havia um sério problema, porque não acontecia nada na cidade. Então, a gente também não tinha dinheiro para sair da cidade, então havia o dilema mudar a cidade ou mudar de cidade. A gente foi obrigado a começar a fazer alguma coisa. As primeiras e aquele grupo de amigos que mais tarde viria a criar essa cena chamada Mangue Beat, começou a se organizar e fazer festas. As primeiras festas eram no bairro do Recife, que é o bairro do Porto. Na época era um bairro escuro, que não tinha, basicamente de noite só tinha prostituta e os marinheiros e vagabundos, mas havia uns lugares incríveis para festa e a gente alugava esses lugares, que era muito barato. Então a gente tocava um tipo de música muito nova, muito radical, qualquer coisa de hip hop a rock ou dos primeiros discos de música eletrônica que chegava em nossas mãos. Então era uma música muito diferente do que se ouvia nas rádios ou na televisão, e as pessoas que frequentavam essas festas acabaram se conhecendo e formando as bandas.
Fred Zero Quattro was part of that group and became the leader of the band Mundo Livre. They started in the mid-80s, influenced both by British punk bands like The Clash and Brazilian samba. He plays a samba instrument, the cavaquinho. In 1992, Fred Zero Quattro co-wrote the Mangue Beat manifesto that was to shake up Recife. It was called Crabs with Brains, and it took its inspiration from the crabs that flourish in the Recife swamps.
Emergency. Get the paramedics or Recife dies of heart attack. The quickest way to kill and empty the soul of a city is to kill its rivers and fill its estuaries. How to avoid drowning in the chronic depression that paralyzes the citizens? It's simple. Just inject some energy into the mud and stimulate what's left of fertility in the veins of Recife. Dream up an energy circuit capable of connecting the positive vibrations of the mangroves with the World Wide Web. The symbol, a parabolic antenna rammed into the mud.
Havia um clima que eu achava que era como se fosse meio uma comunidade inteira doente, uma comunidade inteira sofrendo de depressão. E a gente precisava inventar uma nova cena na cidade.
The Mangue Beat movement took its inspiration not just from rock and hip-hop, but from the traditional music of Pernambuco's state, especially maracatu, a secular ceremonial percussive style with its roots in African slave culture.
Maracatu é um ritmo que ele foi criado aqui dentro do estado de Pernambuco com origens africanas, junto com os escravos. Quando eles aqui chegaram, eles fincaram essas raízes e o maracatu era uma festa que eles brincavam de ser a corte. Eles eram a plebe, as pessoas, né, os escravos, e tinha o rei, a rainha, e o maracatu era a representação disso no Congo, como se eles fossem os reis do Congo vindo no Brasil. Aí tinha o rei do Congo, a rainha do Congo e a corte negra.
The key figure in the Mangue Beat movement was Chico Science. Along with his band, Nassau Zumbi, he transformed maracatu, taking a rhythm from the slavery days and reworking it for the 90s.
Botam se são boas e a cidade se apresenta centro das ambições. Para mendigos no rio cima sobe e o de baixo desce. A cidade não para, a cidade só cresce. O de cima sobe e o de baixo desce.
Chico Science was born Francisco de Assis Franca in 1966. He'd started out as a fan of hip-hop and rock, and then began to broaden his style.
O ritmo, a batida, foi uma coisa que a gente criou. A ideia base é pegar os ritmos regionais e incrementar. Incrementá-los, redimensionar, dando uma nova visão, né? E isso com toda a bagagem pop mundial que se tinha. Então, foi justamente essas duas coisas. Os Mangue Boys estão antenados com o mundo, pegando o regional com o universal e fazendo o Mangue Beat.
One of the characteristics of Mangue Beat was that every artist had a different style.
O Mangue Beat não é um movimento pelo conceito, é uma movimentação. Isso é uma diferença gritante, porque em momento nenhum houve unidade estética que juntasse essas facções. O Mangue Beat é uma maravilhosa movimentação porque celebrou a diferença.
Mangue Beat transformed Recife's view of itself and of the culture of the surrounding region. The Zona da Mata, the sugar-growing area, is where Maracatu has its roots, where Maracatu ceremonies and contests first started and still take place, particularly at carnival time. Along with Chico Science and Fred 04, the third key figure in the Mangue Beat movement was Seba, leader of the band Mestre Ambrosio. Seba became a specialist in the Maracatu contests, in which different groups use improvised poetry to discuss current affairs, challenge the skills of their rivals, and brag about their own prowess, much as in hip-hop.
Maracatu, it was not as popular as now. In the beginning, it was really from the rural places. Nobody wanted to know about it, only the people of this region who like it. Even here, only the poor people wanted it. And after the beginning of the 90s, it began to be seen as something valuable.
Cruzeiro da Bringa, no batente da capela, eu acendi uma vela pelo que aconteceu. Vai!
With Mestre Ambrosio and his later band, Floresta, Seba took traditional rhythms like Maracatu or the coastal circle dance Ciranda and made them the basis of a new Brazilian music.
They were moved more to make something happen in Recife and also to look more to our own culture and our own music, not as a folklorical thing far away from them, but using that original music with the influence of pop, rock and hip-hop to create something new.
Quando eu canto ciranda, não sinto sede nem fome, não lembro nem mesmo nome, que dia eu fui batizado.
But on February 2nd, 1997, Mangue Beat, or Mangue Beat as it was now becoming known, suffered its greatest setback and tragedy. Chico Science was killed in a car crash just outside Recife during Carnival. He was just 30 years old. there are still memorials and reminders of his work across the city.
Para nós é diferente falar sobre Chico.
Muito técnico às vezes.
Ele era nosso amigo, então nós não temos essa visão dele ser algo, um mito ou algo que as pessoas tentam transformá-lo numa pessoa como se ele tivesse vindo de Marte, de outro planeta. Ele era nosso amigo, nasceu junto conosco, morava no nosso bairro, era nosso vizinho.
Recife's annual carnival is regarded by some Brazilians as the finest in the country, simply because it's a free event and has not been commercialised. The processions provide a reminder that Maracatu too is now a popular style in the city. And a free concert by Chico Science's former band, Nassau Zumbi, is preceded by chants of Chico, Chico from the massive crowd.
They changed Recife, they changed Pernambuco, and they also changed Brazil. Chico Science and Nação Zumbi opened up doors for a new generation of Brazilian bands who are not samba or bossa nova bands. And I think, names like Seu Jorge or CSS, Cansei de Ser Sexy, we opened up doors for them.
Chico Science and Nação Zumbi was a great influence to all of us, and because they are the greatest and strongest things we have in 90s in Brazil.
I think Chico Science is the most important guy in the music in the last 10 years. That's it. It's my generation. He's a leader for me. He's a big leader. Have another one. It's called Mano Brown. It's from hip hop.
Faz o cidadão José, servindo o estado PM bom, passa fome metido a Charles Bronson. Ele sabe o que eu desejo, sabe o que eu penso. Dia tá chuvoso, o clima tá tenso.
While Chico Science and Mangue Beat shook up Recife, Mano Brown, the leader of Brazil's most militant hip-hop band, Rationais MCs, had the same effect in the predominantly black shanty towns that had sprung up around Sao Paulo to the south. Once again, Brazilian music was defined and split by the issues of wealth and race.
Olha, no Brasil, o hip-hop teve caminho um pouco inverso dos Estados Unidos e da maioria de outros lugares de países de primeiro mundo. O hip-hop passou a ter uma função social, assim como teve no início nos Estados Unidos.
Rationais MCs started in 1988, when 3/4 of Brazil's population of 146 million was crammed into urban areas with nearly a third living below the poverty line. By the early 90s, they were established as the voice of the poor Sao Paulo suburbs and attracted audiences of up to 10,000 people at their shows.
Fazendo desse tipo de música a voz de uma juventude que não tem voz e não tem oportunidade. Na verdade, ele chegou meio que junto em todos os lugares do Brasil, mas aonde ele se instalou com maior força foi em São Paulo.
Beyond the favelas in Sao Paulo itself, a new and very different music was evolving that reflected life in a cosmopolitan business centre that was now the 4th largest city in the world, described by the producer Suba as Blade Runner in the tropics. Suba had moved to Brazil from Serbia to become the most experimental and influential record producer of the 90s, mixing electronica with Brazilian styles. Sao Paulo Confessions, his best-known work, involved contributions from the singer Cibele.
I still think some of those tracks are very, very fresh, because exactly he just did whatever he felt, so it was very unique because it was him.
Suba! Well, Sao Paulo Confessions is definitely one of the best albums in the world, and you know, that's what it is.
There was bossa beats to it, and it was electronic sounding instruments to do those beats. And this is more or less, I think, how he would see it. It's not, oh, crossing this with that. It's, oh, nice beat, I'll use that.
Sao Paulo Confessions was released in 1999, by which time Suba had started work on what would prove to be his most successful commercial production, an album by Bebel Gilberto. The daughter of João Gilberto, the legendary hero of the bossa movement, she was born in New York and had spent much of her life not in Brazil, but in America and Mexico. Suba set out to transform her bossa nova-influenced style with contemporary production work. But in November 1999, with the album almost finished, Suba was killed in a fire in his studio. He'd been trying to rescue some of Bebel's recordings.
Someone to cling to me, stay with me right or wrong. Someone to sing to me, some little salva song. Someone to take my heart and give his heart to me. Someone who's ready to give love a start with me.
I learned a lot from him, and I totally lost all my prejudice with electronics, samples, sounds, transferring, doing effects on my voice, chopping up, killing Frankenstein style, and I just really, really miss him, but he did an amazing work.
Bebel completed the album herself. Tanto Tempo was released the following year and became a massive international success.
I'll describe Tanto Tempo as an album that definitely came in a good time. I was lucky. First, you know, I'm not being humble, but it's true. It was a good time. Brazil was in a good moment. It was right after Buena Vista Social Club kind of movement.
E tenho muito sono de manhã.
Tanto Tempo was nominated for a Grammy and established Bebel Gilberto as the most successful new Brazilian international artist of this century. But within Brazil itself, the reaction was far more muted.
I think the main difference between, for example, a young artist like Chico Science and a young artist like Bebel Gilberto is that Chico's music was much more revolutionary, and I think Bebel did basically what her father had done before, maybe in a modern way, using electronic elements.
I think there is a different market for Brazilian music, inside and outside Brazil, definitely. I must say that I wouldn't get to the point of what I did with Tanto Tempo, and I'm still doing for this long 7 years, if I was living in Brazil, that's for sure.
In Rio de Janeiro, the city once glamorized by Bebel's father and the bossa nova movement, the new music also reflected the divisions in wealth and race. Here, as in the shanties of Sao Paulo, new black styles offered an alternative to white rock or electronica. But in Rio, funk was the dominant style. American funk stars like James Brown had first become popular in the city back in the 70s during the military era, but in the late 80s and early 90s, a new, distinctively Brazilian style emerged.
Ele saiu dos clubes, das classe média, classe alta. O funk nessa época era que chegou e dominou, na verdade, o Rio de Janeiro, foi o Miami Beats. Então eram letras totalmente em inglês, a galera curtia muito. E aí depois a própria galera das comunidades começaram a fazer letras em cima das melodias americanas.
Funk parties, or baile funk, became a regular and at times violent feature of Rio's social life, particularly out in the northern suburbs.
It was like millions of people dancing to funk, hip-hop, Miami bass, every weekend, and it was like nobody in the media listened to it. So it was like secret or like non-existent. When the media discovered funk was because of a problem here at Arpoador Beach.
In 1992, there was a riot on Rio's Arpoador Beach. Gangs of youths from the favelas swept down from the hills to fight each other, and funk fans were blamed.
So the government closed all the most popular clubs where the funk parties happened. And so funk had to go more and more inside the favelas because it was the only place where the police could not stop the party. And so I think the government of Rio gave the most popular and most interesting music, the most powerful music that the culture of Rio created to the drug dealers.
By the 90s, Rio had become a divided city. Along the seafront of Copacabana and Ipanema, the grand beaches and the glamorous women who'd inspired the bossa nova movement remained. But on the surrounding hills, the favelas were now run by heavily armed drug gangs who'd gradually ousted control from the police since the ending of the military era. It was here, away from the authorities, that funk moved and developed, now one of 3 distinctive favela styles.
Não, ela só é boa, porque se a gente for falar de samba, funk e hip hop, são 3 músicas que vêm do gueto e aí é exatamente música que representa o povo do Rio.
A third of Rio's population, now estimated at 12 million, lives in the favelas, in neighbourhoods like Cidade de Deus, City of God, which gave its name to the celebrated film about the violent side of Rio life. The film was no exaggeration. The favelas are often battlegrounds between police and drug gangs, or between the rival gangs themselves. The gangs employ youths, some just children, as their armed soldiers. 4,000 of those aged under 18 have been shot over the past 14 years. Brazil has the second highest gun death rate in the world. All this inevitably was reflected in the music. Funk balls became the venue for organised fights, in which rival gangs lined up against each other.
E nessa época que foi proibida era exatamente a época dos corredores, onde o lado A brigava com o lado B, onde cada grupo era de uma região diferente e se encontrava, então tinha muita violência.
Ironically, it was the drug gang leaders who stopped fighting at funk balls, as funk became an increasingly important part of favela life.
Funk foi proibido nos principais locais da cidade do Rio de Janeiro e foi isolado nos guetos e limitado a essas pessoas falarem, na verdade, da sua realidade, das coisas que são muito próximas e da informação que elas têm. Então, se a gente der, o funk já foi um tipo de música que nos ajudou muito a mostrar uma realidade diferente desses locais.
Funk balls became regular free parties, many organised by the drug gangs themselves, and attracting crowds of up to 1 million every weekend across the favelas. The music is loud and raw, and the lyrics often controversial, with so-called funk proibida praising the gang bosses or describing the shootings. MC Playboy says this is not his style, but he understands it.
Eu não digo que seja funk proibido, eu falo que é o funk da verdade, porque é uma coisa que ninguém quer ouvir, mas na verdade que todo mundo quer ouvir, porque fala de arma, de droga, de tráfico. É um modo de mostrar como as coisas acontecem.
Funk to me is our future folk. It's our future folk. The first digital music come from the roots. Because in the start you used to copy that Miami-based style. But now it's completely different. It's like a punk rock in the beginning in London. It's shocking to people.
But some performers, like MC Playboy, are critical of the way that funk has developed. He became an established figure on the Baile Funk circuit, and he lives in the heart of the Complexo de Alemão favela, one of the areas controlled by drug gangs. MC Playboy is one of the favela artists who argue that some funk lyrics are now too shocking, too obscene, and need to change.
Agora, recentemente, com essa nova roupagem do funk, estão agredindo muito as mulheres, e elas mesmas não estão se dando conta que, na verdade, o que elas estão sendo chamadas, elas não gostariam que chamasse as filhas delas.
Hoje o funk só fala de sexo, somente sexo, e da maneira mais depravada que tem.
Funk was both praised as the new folk and condemned for its lyrics, as was hip-hop, the second popular style in the favelas.
Minha condição é sinistra, não posso dar rolé, não posso ficar de bobeira na pista, na vida que eu levo eu não posso.
MV Bill became the celebrity of karaoke hip-hop from Rio. Like the Rationais MCs in Sao Paulo, he was known for his controversial songs.
24 horas de tensão, ligado na polícia, bolado com os alemão.
The video for Soldado do Moro was banned, though he insisted he was not glorifying the gangster lifestyle, but showing what he called the hidden reality in our daily life. Despite the controversy, MV Bill has won awards from the United Nations. He still lives in that now notorious favela, City of God.
A Cidade de Deus é lugar que é considerado celeiro artístico, porque tem muitos grupos musicais aqui dentro. E em lugares onde tem muita tristeza, muita falta de oportunidade, descaso, preconceito e violência, a arte acaba fazendo renascer essas vidas que muitas das vezes já parecem estarem perdidas.
Minha mina de fé tá em casa com o meu menor, agora posso dar do bom e melhor. Várias vezes me senti menos homem, desempregado e meu moleque com fome. É muito fácil vir aqui me criticar, a sociedade me criou, agora manda me matar, me condenar e morrer na prisão, virar notícia de televisão.
Ao contrário do hip-hop americano, no Brasil ainda, acho que até por conta de não ter conseguido esses espaços grandes na televisão, ainda se mantém uma certa fidelidade ainda aos assuntos, que são poucos comentados até dentro da própria música brasileira. Você vê as diferenças sociais do Brasil são gritantes, um desequilíbrio muito grande. E a arte, eu acho que tem o poder de comunicar direto com as pessoas, de levar um alento para elas.
One of the most successful and idealistic bands of the favelas was formed as the direct result of one of Rio's most notorious massacres. On August the 29th, 1993, plainclothes military police in unmarked cars drove into the Vigario Geral favela, looking to avenge the deaths of 4 police who'd been shot by drug dealers, allegedly after demanding bribes. Shooting indiscriminately, the police killed 21 people, from children to the elderly. Afro Reggae started as a fight back by the community. First, there was the Afro Reggae newsletter dealing with black music and politics, then a band promoting an alternative lifestyle to that offered by the drug gangs.
Quero liberdade, não quero caridade, eu não quero caridade, não, não. Nos carregue, é mais o nosso reggae, yeah,
Vários jovens estavam revoltados com a chacina, onde 21 pessoas que não tinham nada a ver com o tráfico foram assassinadas por policiais militares. Então o Afro-Reggae entrou justamente com o intuito de desviar o jovem do tráfico e do subemprego, oferecendo perspectivas de vida.
A única cultura que imperou nessa comunidade, até a entrada do Afro-Reggae e de outras organizações, foi a cultura da violência. Então quando o Afro-Reggae fez um arrastão pelas ruas de Vigário, com percussão, com dança, aquilo atraía a gente de uma forma que nunca tinha acontecido. Foi um momento muito especial pra gente. Então eu, quando era molequinho, tinha 13 anos de idade, fui atrás daquele som, eu e mais a comunidade inteira.
Afro Reggae evolved into a social movement, starting a whole variety of different musical projects across the favelas, from dance groups to Bloco Afro percussion groups that take part in the Rio Carnival. The band now runs 50 separate projects and 5 cultural centres, all based in favelas where the drug gangs operate. The aim is still to get young recruits away from the gangs and to offer mediation when there's trouble.
Esse trabalho de mediação, que não é qualquer um que faz, ele traz muitos riscos pra gente e a gente tem consciência disso. A gente sabe que numa mediação de conflito, quando a guerra estoura, o principal mediador é quem morre. E a gente já sobreviveu de várias mediações. O Rio de Janeiro é uma cidade sitiada por várias facções. O Afro-Reggae é uma das poucas, se não a única organização que circula em todas elas sem pedir permissão a ninguém.
Alongside their work in the favelas, Afro Reggae developed their musical career. They tour regularly on the international circuit and have opened for the Rolling Stones. They play a fusion of Brazilian styles, influenced by hip-hop, funk, reggae, and the most distinctive Rio style of them all, samba, which has survived all the new musical competition.
O samba aqui vai ser sempre em primeiro lugar, depois os outros elementos que viram moda, né? No caso o hip hop, entendeu? No Brasil tá sempre chegando coisas novas, mas assim, o principal é o samba.
It was in the Rio favelas that modern-day samba first emerged, at the start of the last century. Samba then evolved into a whole variety of styles, including the realistic samba de moro that described the tough realities of favela life in the 60s. Brasileiro da Silva, who died in 2005, performed new sambas about those forced to live in the Rio shanties.
Sim, mas a favela nunca foi reduto de marginal, eu falei. A favela nunca foi reduto de marginal. Só tem gente humilde e marginalizada, e essa verdade não sai no jornal. A favela é problema social. A favela é problema social.
Samba, it's argued, is similar to hip-hop and funk because they have the same roots. They all started out as favela music, unpopular with the authorities because of their lyrics.
Acho que o funk o hip hop e o samba, eles acabam sendo fruto de uma mesma árvore. E tiveram... eles sofrem preconceitos muito parecidos, porque são feitos pelo mesmo tipo de pessoas. O samba no início reivindicava coisas parecidas com o que o hip hop fala hoje, e são ritmos marginalizados, até que a burguesia caia, até que caia no gosto da burguesia.
A favela é um problema social. A favela é um problema social.
Seu Jorge brought Bezerra da Silva's message to the international market. A singer-songwriter who mixes samba with Western pop, he developed his style after meeting Chico Science, the Mangue Beat hero. Chico's music was based on going back to the roots, reviving Maracatu from his local region, Pernambuco. He advised Seu Jorge to go back to the roots of Rio's longest established style, samba.
One day, Chico Science say, make some with your region. You're from Rio de Janeiro. What do you hear? He's asking me, what do you hear all life or like children? Okay, Bezerra da Silva, Martinho da Vila, something like that. Okay, still hear this, you will be found in your song.
Like many brought up in the favelas, Seu Jorge had a tough early life. He became a musician after leaving home and sleeping rough, following the chance death of his brother in a gangland shooting.
I lost my home and I started my career with the music because I don't want to be one social problem.
Seu Jorge became an international celebrity, both for his music and as a film star after his appearance as Knockout Ned in City of God. Seu Jorge is very different to Brazil's earlier international samba celebrities, who presented an exotic, glamorous image of Rio life, for he lectures audiences in the West about the realities of the favelas.
I'm from Rio de Janeiro, and now the situation is still the same situation. Bad for poor peoples.
Back in the 30s, samba from the poor areas of Rio had influenced the more mainstream samba styles. Now, a new samba fusion has emerged away from the favelas. Marcelo D2 started out writing songs about police violence with the band Planet Hemp, then changed direction in 2003 with A Procura da Batida Perfeita, looking for the perfect beat. The title had been borrowed from Africa Bambata, but it was original for the way in which it mixed hip-hop with samba.
Quando eu comecei a fazer samba com rap, foi uma coisa natural. Eu não pensei, vou fazer esse caminho para que o rap brasileiro tenha uma cara própria. Mas eu acho que isso acabou acontecendo. Acho que o rap brasileiro está tendo uma cara própria a partir disso. Eu acho que essa é a saída pro rap aqui no Brasil, tomar um mainstream e chegar ao povo mesmo, é usando o samba. Uma grande parte do público de hip hop agora está descobrindo o samba porque eu tenho trazido esses sambistas pro mundo do rap.
Marcelo D2's songs and videos made use of classic samba artists, from Zeca Pagodinho to Wilson das Neves. It was a reflection of the way that samba has become fashionable with yet another generation, even with the young audiences who pack the music venues in Rio's bohemian quarter, Lapa. Here, Wilson das Neves plays with a new samba band, Orquestra Imperial, a role that he's taken over from Sir Jorge.
Canto Orquestra Imperial!
Eles me chamaram, me convidaram, porque conhece o Seu Jorge, é que era da Orquestra Imperial. Seu Jorge se tornou ator, né? E começou a fazer cinema e tal, e não comportava mais aquilo para ele. Aí me convidaram para o lugar dele, pô, no meio da juventude, eu me sinto um garoto com os garotos lá tocando, cantando, me dão muita força.
Que eu quero morrer de marmita na mão. Pois quem é de samba, meu nome não quer.
Orquestra Imperial was started by three friends, Alexandre Cassin, Moreno Veloso, the son of Tropicalia hero Caetano Veloso, and the drummer Domenico Lancelotti. It began as a novelty. They were only going to play 4 shows, but developed into a reflection of the new fashion for samba.
The young people pretty much enjoying samba is different from the time where we born, like we are 31, 32. When we was 18, like it was not normal to like samba. But I think now, like most of the young people I see, like 18, 19, 20 years old, they go to watch samba like every night. It's becoming like really trendy.
I think that there's many beautiful compositions and beautiful rhythms and beautiful dancing around samba. So when you have those beautiful things together, even if it's many years not listened to, it's still beautiful.
Cassin, Moreno and Domenico also run a very different band. Its records appear under different titles depending on which of the trio is playing the lead role, and their music is a mixture of indie rock, electronica and samba. It's a new pop fusion that, they say, sums up contemporary Brazil.
Isso é natural pra caramba da nossa geração, que é caótica, que a gente cresceu escutando tudo que é tipo de música, e o país é assim também. Há uma mistura assim no âmago das coisas, tipo, tudo é muito misturado. A língua usa termos de fora, as religiões, e a música, então é muito natural que as coisas fiquem desse jeito, ainda mais hoje em dia.
Brazilian music is indeed mixed up, and there are now competing styles in every major region and city. So if the music of Sao Paulo and Rio reflected the social and economic divisions in each area, this was equally true in Salvador, the capital of the predominantly black state of Bahia. In the 70s and 80s, a new style, samba reggae, became the dominant music of Salvador, linked to the black Bloco Afro percussion groups that took part in carnival parades.
and I'm remembering a road sign. I'm remembering a girl when I was young. And we said these songs are true, these days are ours, these tears are free.
Olodum, Salvador's best-known samba reggae bloco, provided the backing for Paul Simon's album, Rhythm of the Saints, in 1990.
Had a lot of fun, had a lot of money.
It didn't have the impact of his earlier album, Graceland, recorded with South African musicians, but it did bring Olodum a new audience.
Paul Simon heard about the Olodum, and he came to Bahia to play our one track of his album, Obvious Child. After this, he got to Olodum to Central Park in New York to open his concert. Then Olodum will start the international career, yeah, and it became one of the most important and most famous Afro-Baiano groups in the US and in Europe.
Salvador's Bloco Afro groups like Olodum had first emerged in the 70s with help from the city's best-known black singer and reggae enthusiast, Gilberto Gil, the one-time hero of the Tropicalia movement, who'd earlier been jailed and exiled by the military government. In 2002, 30 years after returning from exile, Gilberto Gil was appointed Minister of Culture. He joined the government of the new president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, better known simply as Lula, and became Brazil's first black minister.
Being black had a lot to do with the burst, the impulse for me to accept it. I think that being an artist and being popular and being able to sing and being able to perform and being able to bring the poetic element into life, into people's lives and everything, that helps being a minister.
Being a minister didn't stop Gilberto Gil performing. The following year, he made a raunchy appearance with Ivete Sangalo, also from Salvador, who was now the new queen of Brazilian pop.
Amazing. The minister, Gilberto Gil, sing with me, a crazy woman. What's up, suck it up, suck it up. But in Brazil means another things,
Ivete Sangalo started out playing with Banda Eva, who sold 4.5 million albums in the 90s, and went on to become one of the most successful solo pop musicians in Brazilian history.
She's the most expensive act in the Brazilian entertainment world. She's able to gather enormous crowds, and she dominates Bahia Carnival.
Ivete has become Salvador's carnival queen, famous for her marathon performances as she's driven through the city on a trio electrico, a giant float with a stage on top. She sings Axé, the new commercial carnival music of Salvador, a mixture of samba reggae and other styles that developed during the 90s.
Axé, it's a mix, samba and reggae and frevo from Pernambuco. We can do it, anything. It always will be Axé music.
Pegando 15 quilos de caneleira pra botar esse maiô? Deus é mais! Pisa no meu pé, quero saber quem foi!
Axé is a pop style using elements from
Bahian Afro Brazilian tradition plus Caribbean tradition and Northeastern music tradition. Those three elements together give the taste for axé.
Gilberto Gil, the Minister of Culture, also performs from a trio electrico during the Salvador Carnival, playing a 4 or 5 hour set in front of the crowds of 2 million who pack the streets. It's a vast public party, but the Afro-blockers like Olodum, who parade through a different circuit at carnival time, complain that Salvador's best black music has been taken over.
Axé rhythm is less than samba reggae, and the lyric is very poor, yeah? And I think it's like a marketing strategy. They got the idea from the samba reggae rhythm, you know? And now I think it's a more commercial kind of music.
And in a city and state that's predominantly black, there are complaints that Carnival itself is no longer a black event, simply because most local people can't afford to get into the smart parties overlooking the Carnival route, or pay to follow their favourite artists through the streets in the roped-off enclosures behind each trio electrico.
A Bahia é um estado negro. 80 a 90% da Bahia são negros. E você não vai ver isso no Carnaval da Bahia. O que você vai ver no Carnaval da Bahia são os negros tomando empurrão e se degradando para não encostar nas pessoas que vão sair nos blocos de carnaval. Esse tempo da Bahia, do carnaval, sem apartheid, já acabou. Já existiu nos anos 70, até nos 80, mas agora já era.
The minister disagrees.
The whole of the population, the different social layers, they all contribute and participate, you know, and the government, you know, also involved, the private sectors through the enterprises, all involved. It's very pop and contemporary, you know.
Abençoado por Deus e bonito por natureza, que beleza! O que é que tem em fevereiro? Tem cerveja, tem Ivete, tem a Bahia.
It's fitting that controversy should mix with fun at Salvador Carnival, for that has been the story of Brazilian music. 400 years ago, that story started with the arrival of African slaves along this same stretch of coast. African rhythms mixed with European music to create contemporary samba and the extraordinary variety of styles that exist across Brazil today. Brazilians adore music, and music has expressed the country's history, its problems and its triumphs. And in the process, Brazil has produced some of the greatest and most varied popular music in the world.
Abençoado por Deus e bonito por natureza, que beleza, fevereiro. Eu tenho fusca e violão, eu sou Vitória e tenho uma nega chamada Teresa.
BBC4 uncovers the history of British punk and new wave through the story of Stiff Records in If It Ain't Stiff, next Friday at 9.